Hey, this is Darren from Property Prosperity. I just came from a meeting with a client. They're looking at renting out their house, and they asked me to come around and give them some advice on the best way they should set their house up to prepare for rent, and then likewise, how they make sure they get top dollar when they're renting it out, and also get the best quality tenant. And so I started giving them some advice, and one of the things I mentioned to them, because the house was new, it hadn't actually been lived in before, I said, well, first thing we should be doing is using your plan and putting that on the internet, so that potential purchasers or potential renters may come in there and at least have a good idea of what they got to look for. And he's like, well, no one else does that. I've never really seen a plan of a house for a rental property before. And so then, because he was like, why should we do something different to everybody else? And I tried to explain to him the logic behind renting out a property, which is essentially the same as when you're trying to sell a property. Obviously, if you've listened to any of my videos before, I've explained how I sell properties. So my logic with trying to sell a property is I believe that no one's going to buy a property unless they've seen it. And so my whole thing is, if the more people I can get to come and look at the house, the more chance I've got to get of someone coming and buying the house, essentially. And obviously, the more people that come and put in offers, the more chance of getting more money for the owner, essentially. Hey, Kerry, thanks for joining. And so that's my logic with selling. Get lots of people to come look at the house and basically make them fight for it. So hopefully we can get more money than they otherwise would. The thing is, a lot of agents, rental agents in particular, when they're renting out a property, they don't have similar sort of mindset as an agent does when they're selling a house. An agent selling a house knows you need to spend money on marketing and knows you need good quality photos, and you have obviously a plan and sometimes a video and really good marketing. Whereas when they're renting out a house, because it seems like a relatively small amount of money when you get renting out a property compared to when you're selling a property. Obviously, you're selling a property, it might be $400,000 or $500,000, and obviously the difference between getting a little bit more and getting a little bit less might be $50,000, $60,000. So you can sort of justify spending a few $1,000s on marketing, and because then you see how that's going to put that money back in your pocket. Whereas if you were to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on marketing for a rental property, then you'd say, well, at the end of the day, I'm only going to rent it for $400 a week or $500 a week. So I don't want to be spending, 2, 3, 4 weeks rent on marketing this property, in the sense that, that's a lot of money to give away. So why don't I just take some photos myself and just put an ad on the internet or put an ad in the paper? The reason why it's worth marketing a property in a similar fashion to when we're trying to sell it, is because people nowadays, to be honest, they're a bit lazy. They don't really want to get out there, drive. I'm exactly the same. I don't want to go driving around the weekends looking at a whole pile of houses. I'd really rather just get on my phone, on the internet, have a look through a few properties, and then decide which ones I like and which ones I'm going to go and have a look at. Now, if we use the logic of the more people that come and look at it, the more chance we got of renting the property, then the better we present the property on the internet, the more chance we're going to have of people coming to have a look at the property. So my number one thing is obviously try and present the property as well as possible. So obviously making it really clean is one thing. You may even consider hiring some furniture. It is quite expensive to hire furniture. It might cost you a couple of grand. So really depending on how much you're renting the property for, whether you're actually going to do that or not. Hopefully, if you've got the previous tenants there and their furniture is quite nice, and maybe you can borrow some of their furniture. Or if you've got some old furniture, you can maybe incorporate that into the photos. The next thing is to have some really good quality photos. People are apprehensive to use professional photos for rental properties because they're saying, well, what benefits that going to cost? And it might cost a couple $100s to get some professionally done photos. But the difference between some photos taken on your iPhone compared to some professional quality photos is going to be massive. And what that's going to mean, if people are making their decision based on the photos, which a lot of people do when they're looking on the internet, then that could be the difference between having a really good tenant come and have a look at your property, or having a really good tenant deciding they can't be bothered and they don't come. And so the people that, when I'm renting out properties, I say to people, really, you want to get the nicest person you possibly can. And someone, to be honest, the person that really cares what their house looks like, because someone that really cares what their house looks like, they probably care what their friends think. And so they're more likely to pay a premium for a nicer house because they want a nicer house, because they care how their house looks, and they care what their friends think about their house. So they're more likely to pay an extra $10 or $20 a week. And so what that's going to translate into is not only more rent, but also a better quality tenant that's probably going to look after the house a lot nicer than they otherwise would. So likewise, and with another marketing strategy, is just putting some plans on there. Just like if you're trying to sell a house, people are apprehensive to drive around and look at houses that they don't actually know what the layout of the house is. Same sort of thing with someone that's renting. You've got to understand, someone that's renting it, they're renting it to live in. So they want to know what the layout of the house is, how big the bedrooms are, and how big the living areas are, and where the doors go, and how big the backyard is. All that sort of stuff is really important to people. Just like you're going to live there, you'd care about all that stuff. So if you're going to rent the house, it's going to be exactly the same. So why not give people more information other than less? People make the assumption if you haven't got a plan there, then it must be a bad plan, or if you don't have any photos there, then there must be bad photos. So my advice to you is the more information, the better. Particularly if there's nothing wrong with your property. And like this client that I went out and looked at the house, it was a brand new house. It looked amazing. They had a great plan, a great layout. It would have come up with some great photos. So why try to keep it a secret? So, hey Alexi, thanks for joining. So yeah, definitely, if you're trying to rent a property, it's definitely worth spending more money. Not only because of the fact you might rent it for some more, more higher rent per week type thing, but also the fact is just having a better quality tenant can literally save you thousands of dollars and huge amounts of heartache. By having a good quality tenant, one that's going to pay your rent on time and not trash your house. The worst thing in the world is a tenant not paying your rent. If say it's $500 a week, and before you know it, that's 1 week gone, that's $500, 2 weeks gone, that's $1,000. And obviously you can start taking them to court and you can do a whole pile of different things, but it's a massive hassle. And even then, it's still quite hard to get your money back at the end of the day. It's quite easy for your bond to get eaten up by defaulted rent, and then all you need is for some damage to happen down the track as well, and before you know it, your bond money that you had is not covering all the costs associated with the lack of rent, as well as all the effects of damage to the house and all that sort of stuff. So I would not rely on the bond to try and cover any issues associated with a tenant. I would more focus on, let's get a really good quality tenant that's going to look after the house, that's going to pay the rent each week. And so the better quality tenant is really going to come from the more choice of tenants. So the more people that come along to your open inspection, the more chance you get choosing the perfect tenant for you. At the end of the day, if you've got 100 potential tenants come along, then you can pick out that one perfect tenant out of 100. Whereas if you only have 2 potential tenants that come along, you've only got a choice of 1 out of 2. And so the chance of you getting the perfect tenant may be a bit lower than otherwise if you had 100 to choose from. So hopefully you understand my logic behind why it's really important to market your property really well if you're renting it, and how it can actually save you thousands of dollars, but also save you a huge amount of heartache. If you've considered renting, or you're considering renting now, then perhaps if you want to share this out to your friends, and hopefully they find it really interesting. If you've had an experience in the past where you've tried to market your rental property and you've done something a little bit different to try and attract the perfect tenant, or likewise maybe you wish you'd had to try a little bit harder and put some better photos in there or some plans in there, and you're a bit disappointed with the quality of tenant, I'd love to hear about it. So put a comment in the comment box. Or if you've got something you'd like me to talk about in a future episode, then put a comment in there. I'm more than happy to chat about anything related to property. So thanks guys for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you again next time. Thanks.